Hey guys, this video is going to be an analysis of Xin Zhao's biography, okay? We're not going to go into depth of Aftermath. We're not going to go into depth of what once sailed free. These are two stories that involve Xin Zhao. Aftermath being retconned now, it doesn't exist anymore, or at least it's been delegated to be alternate universe. And what once sailed free we won't go into now because it's just gonna take too much time, genuinely. And all the new stuff he got this year, also not relevant now, not for now. We might go into it in another video, but I want to try and keep these as short as I possibly can because my recent videos have all been over an hour long. And I filmed this one twice and it's over an hour long. And I can't just post that and expect results. And expect you guys to want to sit through that without, having an idea about what you are about to receive. So instead, we're just going to try and do an analysis of his biography, and then from there, figure out how we want to go about explaining the rest of his stories and who the character is, right? So it's no secret that Xin Zhao has just died, and that is why we're doing this. Because I disagree with a lot of the choices that Riot makes, and I think that I kind of want to show why, I suppose, is what I intend on doing, right? So just right off the bat, let's just go through the story. Rumored to have never lost in one-on-one combat, Xin Zhao spent much of his life fighting an uphill battle. Alright, so already, we have two things we need to take note of. He is rumored to have never lost in combat, in one-on-one combat at least, and he is also, or rather he spent much of his life fighting an uphill battle. So both of these are like establishing sentences, and we just, our job in this situation is just to ask why, to literally everything. We are being proposed a few facts. We need to get the answers out of the text that explain why this is the case. So he is rumored to have never lost in one-on-one combat. So why is it a rumor? Why would he never have lost in one-on-one combat? Why is it important? And what does it say about the character? So the bottom two questions don't really matter right now. They kind of matter in the bigger picture. So we can just sort of stick with the first two. As you can see, this is only the very first line, even before the comma. So I'm gonna try to get through this a bit quicker because otherwise it's just gonna take way too long, right? The next one, Xin Zhao spent much of his life fighting an uphill battle. Okay, why is most of his life an uphill battle? And why does he choose to fight? Because, and the reason that's important, that might seem like a stupid question to ask, but why I think that it's an important question, because it sort of proposes another question, which is, why did he not just accept the hand he was given and made the best of it? Why did he decide to fight what he was given, right? Why does he fight an uphill battle instead of just accepting his situation and making the best of it? Let's talk. It is just to be said that I assume that you guys know what Xin Zhao's story is. And in that case, I'll just kind of jump to some conclusions, right? But what we know is that Xin Zhao becomes Viscero, and he becomes Viscero, who's a Noxian reckoner. Obviously, the uphill battle is it's coming to it's being shown in a bunch of different ways. So they do answer the question. Right now we're just asking the questions, right? But why does he choose to fight? That's something important about Xin Zhao, because he could have just stayed as a reckoner. He decided to go because he got money for it. But you'll also come to see that the reason that he fights is not because he enjoys it. It's because he doesn't see any way out, and that, like, he's not the character who wants to be, he doesn't want to be Viscero. It's just that he doesn't really have a way out, right? And that's why he's fighting in an uphill battle. Right. Some of his earliest memories. Why earliest memories? The answer to that is usually because it leaves an impression. Why does it leave an impression that his earliest memory is of the Viscero, the boat? Right. So this is a new question we have. And also we're going to update these questions as soon as we have them answered through the text, right? Yeah. So the Viscero is an Ionian, actually will, whatever, I'll just write it down here. An Ionian fishing boat. He served off the coast of Rykon. So the city doesn't really matter. It matters if the city has been like developed. I don't believe Rykon has. We'll just take a look at it. Okay, there's some fluff going on here. Okay. Right, actually it's pretty nice to know how map League of Legends. Type of flora, blah, blah, blah. We'll just figure out what Rykon really is. I think it's the southernmost area then. Never mind, it's up here. Okay. Sure. So this is where Xin Zhao grew up. But other than that, it doesn't really say a whole lot, right? Cool. He served on an Ionian fishing boat. Why? That's a new question, right? Why is he serving on an Ionian fishing boat? Then it gets to some important stuff about him. Xin Zhao is a diligent cabin boy. He obeyed his elders' every request, from cleaning grimy decks to fixing tangled nets. And this is important, enjoyed a piece, oh my god, fuck's sake, existence. There we go. So now we have some of our questions answered already. Why is he on the boat? Because he is a diligent cabin boy. Or rather, I guess what's important about it is that he is diligent. He enjoys a peaceful existence. He cleaned grimy decks, fixed tangled nets. Why? Actually, I suppose that's down here in a way, yeah. Why? Because because he, or rather it suggests that he liked dreary, boring, and hard work. He enjoyed, he was and is diligent. Well, I suppose we'll just do the past tense. He was diligent and he enjoyed his life. It was peaceful. Xin Zhao did not have many troubles. Great. Okay. So fixing nets and cleaning grimy decks is boring work. It's dreary, it's hard work, and in many situations and cases it can also be like disgusting or unappealing to do. But Xin Zhao, this is really important about him, right? Xin Zhao did not care, because to him this is kind of just the essence of life. He is diligent, right? This is an important part of him. So how does he get himself into something like one-on-one combat? How does this happen to the character? The character we've been told of right now. Why does he spend his life fighting an uphill battle? We don't know this yet. Now we are going to be told why, and it's gonna make a lot of sense. But we don't know this yet, and these are the questions we want answered through this character, okay? So, until the day, unknowingly ventured too deep into foreign waters. So somehow the boat managed to unknowingly venture too deep into foreign waters, suggesting that the boat went really, really far. What does this tell us about Xin Zhao? Well, while he might not have been in control of the boat itself, he is a diligent boy and would have been aware of the boat's travels had he been opposed to it. This is really important about Xin Zhao too, because what it tells me is that Xin Zhao essentially does not, or at least it's not that he doesn't like Ionia at all. It's not that at all. But there's a part of him that he is yet to discover. There's some he should be aware of this. There's a reason why he does not prevent it. There has to be, because he's a diligent boy. He's a diligent boy doing boring work. If something interesting happens, he would know. He would know. This is an important part of him being on this boat. He spends a lot of time doing it. He knows that he has sailed very far off the coast and that he is in deep waters. He knows this fact. He knows that. Something about it interests him. If you take the boring work and hard work and you imagine, well, if he's supposed to be on a fishing boat and fixing tangled nets, then maybe the curiosities of like the marine life that he catches gets more interesting the further out at sea he goes, right? Okay, wait, okay. So we have, hey, I catch cooler fish out at deeper out at sea. Also, what lies beyond what I know? This then asks the questions, what do you know? We are later answered, and I'll just write it now because it's going to be a little chaotic, unfortunately, but I'll just write it down now. At some point, we are going to be told that he does not know of Noxus, has limited knowledge of the rest of the world, does not know of Noxus nor Boron Darkwill. And this is explained because he learns that this is the capital of Noxus. And that does also say that perhaps he does know what Noxus is, but he does not know what it looks like. And so like this is a bit confusing, right? Because it's like that's not necessarily what it says. It's a counter argument, right? You could just say, well, he knows about Noxus, and when he's brought there, it's just like, okay, he arrives, bro. It's just that's how it's written, right? But how it's actually written, this is why I believe that this is the way it goes, is because he runs into a smaller vessel from Noxus. Now, it's already stated that it's from Noxus. If it was left without identity, or like region identity, we could have been absolutely sure of what I'm about to say. This does confuse things a little bit, because otherwise it should have just been described in the same way that Xin Zhao himself describes Noxus later down. But what's important is that he learns that this was the capital of Noxus. So potentially he already knows what Noxus is, but he does not know what Noxus looks like. And this is kind of what tips me off, right? Because this is the first time he experiences these things. And he had to learn that this was the capital of Noxus. So that means that this boat should look Noxian, right? Noxians would have a boat that kind of mimics the place of their home. But it's also very much possible that he knows what Noxus is and he just hasn't been to the capital, and thus it still surprised him. That is very much possible. Actually, that's probably even more likely. But regardless, it still stands that he has limited knowledge of the world. So I might be able to discover something about myself the farther out I go. What if there lies some I don't know, like a lesson? If I keep going. This is curious and interesting. It excites me. Cool. So we know that Xin Zhao, there's something inside of him that could potentially be curious about the rest of the world, right? It's curious about the fish he can catch. It's curious about the other places of the world. And there's some part of him that is underexplored. Some part of him that he is yet to discover, okay? Right. So, a pair of privateer ships from Noxus chase down the smaller vessel. This also means that since it's a chase, the Viscero did put up an actual chase, which is just like, it means that someone on the vessel was actually pretty skilled at, controlling the boat. This also further emphasizes the idea that the boat would have known how far out it is. It's just that it's kind of suppressed by the feelings of the people on the boat, because clearly they are skilled enough to actually handle the boat. So it's more of like a thing of their emotions limit their awareness, because they want to know what's out there, right? They are interested what is out there. Some, like, it can be for different many different reasons. I do realize, by the way, that my camera is in the way. This is a little bit annoying, actually. There you go. You can fuck. Okay, how do I fix this? I suppose I'll just make myself smaller, yeah? But it's still gonna be a problem later. Oh well. Otherwise, we'll figure something out. It's fine. So it could be for many different reasons that the people on the boat would have, you know, been fine with going further. Some of them might think that they can get a big haul and get money for it. Some of them, it might also interest them. I don't know, maybe they experienced a storm and that actually does trigger some kind of excitement within them. Who knows? Like, it could be a bunch of different things, but these are a bunch of characters, or at least side characters, that you could have, right? Potentially. Their commander cited the glory of the Empire as he boarded. Okay, so they did lose, obviously. Claiming the Viscero and its crew as his rightful property. They were mostly aging fishermen unfit for military service, but they would be taken back to Noxus territory, or rather Noxian territory, regardless. So the very first thing is that the commander he straight up enslaves all of them. This starts to explain why Xin Zhao spent much of his time, his life fighting an uphill battle. Okay, so he's literally enslaved, right? Why does he choose to fight? Because this is not who he is. That is why it's fighting an uphill battle. Otherwise, if he identified with Noxus when he arrived, he would have just taken up that life. He would have been fine with that. But it's a fight because that's not who he essentially is. Let's take a look. So, enslaved, not who he is, so he fights to preserve himself. Uphill battle. They were mostly aging fishermen. Or also, what we can say about the commander at this point. Commander is nationalistic Noxian, or rather is a and he has some kind of yeah, I don't know if that's how you spell that. Okay, but he's being grand in his like description, right? So why does, this is the next question, why does Xin Zhao spend his time amongst mostly aging fishermen, unfit for military service, but they would be taken back to Noxian territory regardless. Okay, so this says something about Noxus. Noxus don't give a fuck, bro. They use you. Don't you worry. Worst case, fodder for Bloodsport. What does it say about Xin Zhao? Right, so why does he spend his time amongst mostly aging fishermen? And why is it important that they are unfit for military service? Why is that important? Because it is more important than you would initially think. You see, Noxus would have probably preferred they were fit for military service. That's how they would use them, right? So that's the first level of why it's mentioned. But when we look a little bit deeper and look at it from the lens of Xin Zhao, then we kind of realize that the people he has spent his entire life among have never been fighters. They've never been fighters. So there's a part of him that he's missing, which ends up being what he becomes. He becomes Viscero, the Reckoner. He becomes a fighter. He realizes the other part of who he is. And he realizes that in Noxus. But the entire idea is that Noxus suppresses what he initially is. Noxus suppresses the half of him that he knows who is. Noxus gives him the other part and kind of exposes him to the idea that he is a fighter. That is what he likes. But it takes away the diligence. Not really the diligence, but he takes away the honorable, the orderly life. He takes away the peaceful life, or rather, Noxus takes away the peaceful life, right? That is removed from him. So that is why when he gets to Noxus and sort of gets to Demacia, actually let's just jump to the idea about what Demacia then represents. Demacia represents both the parts of who Xin Zhao is. That is why he joins. That is why he fights for them. That is why he becomes the closest friend to the king. That is why he becomes the closest servant to the king. That is why he becomes the Seneschal of Demacia. Because he is essentially Demacian virtues and values incarnate. He is what it means to be Demacian. That is why he goes there, and that is why he stays. Let's scroll down a little bit. The very last line. This is about him going to Demacia, right? Xin Zhao's path to becoming Demacian may have been unusual, yet never once has he faltered in his commitment to the kingdom and its ideals. This is not from a sense of duty, he reasons, but by choice. Alright? This is important because Xin Zhao does not care about returning to Ionia. And this is the other thing that we need to discuss. Right. Also, the idea of spending time amongst mostly aging fishermen means that these are old people that have been through a lot and understand who they are themselves, probably. They are pretty defined characters in Xin Zhao's life. And as such, he sort of adapts not necessarily their lifestyle entirely, but more of like he mimics the demeanor. He understands social, or just in general, his culture is aging fishermen. It's not young people. He's not rebellious. He is diligent. He is a nice kid that takes the difficult job and does it because he enjoys it. It's peaceful, it brings him purpose, and it brings him joy. Doesn't matter if it's boring, doesn't matter if it's hard. And this is something I believe we can all learn a bit from, especially myself actually. So I really like this idea that he just kind of enjoys that kind of work. All right. Let's get back to the text. So after enduring a tough journey, why is it a tough journey? That is something that's relevant if you want to, develop this story. Cross the open ocean, okay. Xin Zhao found himself in a strange new land, so he thinks that Noxus is strange. He thinks Noxus is strange. Okay, important. Also, just, fuck's sake, this is so dumb. I'll do this in a different way, I think. We're just gonna do it like this. Yeah, we're just gonna do it like this instead. That's fine. That's fine. Cool. So Noxus is a strange land. Xin Zhao thinks so. Why? It's pretty simple, right? Noxus is against all of the values that Xin Zhao already have, but it is about to bring him something new that he didn't know about himself, right? He also continues, there was no delicate beauty here, rather in the waters here. So that's because, right, he's from a fishing boat, so obviously he would pay attention to the water, right? That's important to him. There was no delicate beauty, so that is him describing what he thinks about Noxus. No magic in the trees, imposing gateways and fortified stone walls unlike anything he had ever seen line the streets. So this is very alien to him, obviously. And people were crammed into every available inch of space. This is also like, I suppose a fishing boat, you could argue, is already sort of cramming people into space. And supposedly, you could actually also say that this is something that he would enjoy about Noxus. That would actually be reasonable to give him that sort of point, right? Now, I think that there's a lot of this stuff, as you can see already. I've been talking for 30 minutes, and we have only reached the second paragraph. And there's already so much we've gotten out of who Xin Zhao is. I believe, and I trust, that you guys understand this thought process now, and that if you have the desire to do this yourselves, you can go through the story and extrapolate the character from what is being said and reading between the lines, right? Just imagine yourself in the situation. What is this life like given these ideals? So as a result, I think I'm going to be skipping most of it now, and then I'll just go through the major steps and the major important stuff, and then I'll briefly conclude the video with talking about the story that he received this year in 2025. And then we'll call that the video, and hopefully it won't be much longer than 40 minutes, maybe 45 at most. I'll do my best at least. If you would like me to do more of this, do let me know. I'll take that to heart and I'll try my best to actually get some stuff out, okay? Right. So he learns of Noxus because he doesn't really know a whole lot about the world, which is why he's interested in it. Separated from the rest of Viscero's crew, this explains, or this doesn't explain, but this tells us that there's something special about Xin Zhao. Because otherwise the question is why, right? There's some specific reason. All right, so he's special, or there is something special. No means of returning home. Xin Zhao entered the service of the man who had taken him prisoner. This is who Xin Zhao is. He's a diligent boy. He does the hard, dreary, grueling work in spite of the circumstances, because that is what brings him joy. His skill with the spear did not go unnoticed. We also have to kind of think about his patron. I don't remember if the patron is the same person as the commander. I don't think so. Let's just figure this out. Okay, it is right. So the patron is also the commander. His skill with his spear did not go unnoticed, and soon he was promised a better life, with meals served on plates in exchange for his martial prowess. So clearly his life is not very good as a slave, and he is actually promised a better life in exchange of servitude, which is already what he's adept at. It appears that he's good with a spear. This is going to become something interesting, right? Noxus celebrated strength, and his patron deemed him to be a strong fighter. There's more about his patron deemed him to be a strong fighter and also did notice his skill. So there's some stuff about who the patron really is, right? Having nothing to lose, the young man accepted. All right, nothing to lose. Regardless, he accepted. He shed his ragged clothes for crude armor and entered the reckoning arenas. Truly, this was a strange form of entertainment. Mighty warriors, known by even mightier titles, fought each other before ravenous crowds who cheered for displays of skill and showmanship as often as they did for blood. It is weird to Xin Zhao. Hubris is weird to Xin Zhao. Arrogance is weird to Xin Zhao. He is not aware of these kinds of issues and concepts, and like, oh well, I suppose he would be aware of them, but he hasn't spent time around it. So all of this is very, very weird to him. He doesn't understand the idea of playing himself big. What he appreciates is service, is a life of servitude of something greater than himself, right? So that is why Viscero is important to him. Something that's greater than himself is the Viscero. Catapulted into success because he represents his former life. This is his fight. He fights to remain, to stay as the person that he is, right? His bouts soon filled with the seats of every arena and also the pockets of his sponsors, and in only a few short years, Viscero became a celebrated name, one that audiences adored and other reckoners came to fear. Right. Xin Zhao, through this time, we've learned who he is as a character. We can easily do some kind of like plotline that goes into the idea that he grows arrogant, like he adopts some of the toxic parts of Noxus, and eventually he will get punished once again by them, and that's when he kind of learns that a bit more about who he really is and distances himself from Noxian ideals. So that is a story you can write. There's a bunch of meat to go into, and like a bunch of stories you can write about this, and a bunch of things that could be very interesting. But this is not specifically stated. It is something that you could do. It's like a plot you could write, yeah? But this good fortune did not last. Okay, well, the story just agrees with me, I suppose, because if it's good fortune, that means that something about it he enjoys in some way, I suppose. But yeah, we already knew that, I guess, because he got resources. Anyway, beyond the distractions of the Reckoner's circuit, the Empire faced difficult times. Hostile nations encroached upon its territories, provoking rebellion all along the Noxian frontier. It was rumored that Dargul and his advisors had offered a fortune in gold for the private release of mercenaries, prisoners, and Reckoners alike to be conscripted into the Empire's war hosts. With little more than a handshake, Xin Zhao and his fellows were brought out and placed on a transport ship heading west. Okay. So this is also where, like, why does Xin Zhao take up the opportunity? This good fortune did not last. That doesn't mean he has to say yes. He offered a fortune in gold to be conscripted to the Empire's war host with little more than a handshake. Right. So, okay, this is important. So a handshake takes place, which means that Xin Zhao had a decision to make. It was his choice. He's already famous, so a fortune in gold is not what's important to him. That is not who his character is. He can definitely have like a character arc about falling to the corruption of who he is by Noxus itself and the influence it has on him and the money that he receives. Easily, that's a really good story you can dive into. But it's important to understand that he himself decides to leave Noxus with a handshake, even though he already have what he's being offered. So I believe what Xin Zhao's really seeking is to get away. Now, he might not be conscious of this necessarily. What is about to happen might actually be what proves to him that he is not Noxian. Actually, I think that it is, because it's gonna go into this exact thing. I see that it's 40 minutes now. I'll hurry up. I promise. Right. So they were placed on a transport ship heading west. Here at the coastal fortress of Kalstead, let's just figure just to make sure. South Valoran nation, Kalstead. I do not believe it is. Is it? Okay, allies of Demacia. Right, so it is not specifically a Demacian nation. Let's just take a look at Kalstead. Should be somewhere... oh, wait, is it this far? It can't be, right? Wait a moment. Because all of this is Demacia, so that's not... or at least I think it ends at Needlebrook. Travail is Noxus, Gloft. Am I blind? This is weird. Maybe it's just been mentioned and never shown. I suppose that's... yeah, okay, so that's what's happening. It's just that it hasn't been inserted onto the map. All right. But we can assume that it's like a... what do you call this? I think it's an oceanic nation? No, that's not the term for it, is it? Either way, it's a nation by the water, right? Because they go there by ship, I believe. A transport ship, yeah. And we also see in the cinematic, or at least I think some of the comics, that Kalstead is by the sea. Right. Here at the coastal fortress, just making sure, please. Yeah. Here at the coastal fortress of Kalstead, the names and reputations of even the most well-known reckoners counted for little. They were hurled into battle against the elite forces of King Jarvan III of Demacia, who was determined to curb Noxian influence on Valoran. And Xin Zhao quickly learned that war was unlike any arena duel. Alright, so this is kind of where it breaks for Xin Zhao. That this is also like explored a bit more in the story. What once sailed free. But like the illusion breaks of what Noxus really is for him. And that it doesn't represent his ideals. Many of the former reckoners deserted in the face of inevitable defeat. Xin Zhao held his ground, staining his spear with the blood of hundreds. This is a little bit weird because in the story One Sail Free, Jarvan III specifically tells Xin Zhao that in spite of his skill, the fight was easy as fuck. And he kind of like mocked Xin Zhao a little bit in like a friendly tone for it. That he was impressed by Xin Zhao, but that, you know, the Demacian forces just completely demolished them. That's also kind of what is insinuated. Like the elite forces of King Jarvan of Demacia, who was determined to curb Noxian influence and quickly learned that war was unlike any arena duel. Like, deserted in inevitable defeat, and that the fact that Xin Zhao is supposed to have killed the hundreds is kind of insane. I'll take this with a grain of salt, if you will allow me. Not only because I'm a Demacia super fan, but also because I believe it to be a little bit crazy. But regardless, we can easily say that Xin Zhao has probably killed a few, right? When the king stormed his vanguard, some of whom were silently impressed by his skill, finally surrounded him, still he refused to run. Xin Zhao stood tall, welcoming his execution, because he fought for something greater than himself. He remembered who he was, and he was no Noxian. He was done, right? He's finished. He was not the things that he learned from Noxus. He isn't the arrogance and all of the selfish ideals that he sort of got corrupted by, right? However, Jarvan thought differently. Unlike the arena crowds, the king of Demacia took no pleasure in needless killing. He granted the defeated Noxians the freedom if they would swear to leave Kalstead in peace. Surprised by this show of mercy, Xin Zhao thought about what awaited him back in Noxus. He could return to society where his life had meant little beyond the gold he earned for his patrons, or he could fight for those who embodied the virtues to which he himself aspired. Right. So the part of him that he discovers in Noxus is the part that remains, and he does not identify with Noxus anymore, so he what is it called? He declares allegiance, there you go, to Demacia. Compelled by honor, he knelt before Jarvan III, pledging himself to the king's service. In the decades that followed, Xin Zhao proved his loyalty time and again, Seneschal of the royal household. Very important that he reached Seneschal. That's like a really, really high rank, right? He's also the most trusted bodyguard and advisor to the king. Not only friend and master, but also not only to his friend and master, but also to the king's son, young Prince Jarvan, who would one day inherit the crown. Xin Zhao's path to blah 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 blah. It's not, has yet never once has he faltered in his commitment to the kingdom and its ideals. This is not from sense of duty, he reasons, but by choice. Yes. All right, guys. Hopefully now we have a really clear image of who. Fuck, it's 46 minutes. I'm so sorry. We have a clear image of who Xin Zhao is. To finish this segment off, the Silas part has been removed once again. So all like the stuff about him messing up and then pledging to Jarvan IV is no longer canon, and Aftermath is also no longer canon. To me, these stories are canon. I don't believe the nature of why they were written this way are necessarily good, because I believe Xin Zhao was left out of the storyline because they just didn't want to spend the resources getting him into the comic. I literally believe that's what it is, because the comic would have been too long and taken up too much. So I don't think it's of good nature that it exists, but I think that it's written well, written really well. And I like this exploration of Xin Zhao having failed his kingdom. And he also pledged to that Tiana Crown Guard was allowed to kill him if anything should ever happen to the king and all this stuff. And Jarvan IV and all this kind of stuff, that he has to deal with all of this pressure. I think that's really interesting. So I loved the story. What one sailed free is the other story that I consider canon about Xin Zhao. We are not going to be going into these stories now, but they kind of expand on what we already know, right? But they also do bring a lot of different things too. Now here comes the entire, idea of everything that's happened with him this year in 2025, after Arcane decided to take over the whole show. So the first things that happen are that LeBlanc, for some reason, she needs Xin Zhao. This is not actually like logically and narratively, it doesn't make sense why Xin Zhao is important to LeBlanc. Okay, just saying. The idea is that LeBlanc thinks, hey, wait, we can get this guy back to Ionia, and he would be a good host, but for the Dark Enclave, which she needs why, and why is there even a Dark Enclave in the first place? There's a bunch of questions. We don't need to go into them now. Unfortunately, we can't get everything answered because of those questions. But LeBlanc plants a wild bloom, which is basically Spirit Blossom, in the Demacian royal gardens. And that triggers Xin Zhao to think, hey, wait a second, that's from Ionia. I remember that. Let's head on, let's head for Ionia. Actually, are the Spirit Blossoms tied to a specific place? Because then that kind of ruins this entire idea. We don't care about all of those product placement things. Let's just take a look at this. Events, trivia. Perennial. What the hell is all of this? During an Avori. I don't remember if everyone in Ionia knows what this is or if it's only a specific region. And I know I would be able to find it, but I don't think I have the time right now. So I'm gonna ignore this and just assume that it's like a global thing for Ionia, but I don't think that it is. Regardless, yeah, it arguably can't be because we have an Arctic part of Ionia, which has never been explored, and then we also have a southern desert part of Ionia, which is where Xin Zhao even is from. So Spirit Blossom stuff kind of doesn't really make much sense here, I suppose. Either way, it doesn't matter, right? Cool. So if we just finish this up instead. LeBlanc somehow decides that Xin Zhao is a good idea and whatever, and somehow she baits him by placing the Wild Bloom inside of the capital of anti-magic. The capital city is probably the largest total petricide structure, like it's not necessarily one structure, right, but like place on the planet. It is the most anti-magic. You don't just place in the very center by the castle itself. You don't just place a Spirit Blossom in that garden. You don't. That's not how that works. You're just disrespecting the stories of Spirit Blossom, which in general is not really that great, but I'm not gonna blame that too much. It has potential, right? You heard LeBlanc, you heard Xin Zhao, you heard Demacia, you heard Petricide. It's just all of it. It's no, you don't do this. You don't do this because it's not possible. And yes, that does limit what you can do with Demacia, but there are ways to go about that. Like Silas works, the fact that he can drag magic out of Petricide, that works. It works. Like the fact that it is so anti-magic is the reason that the people of Demacia don't even believe in magic in the first place. Because they've never seen it. The city literally does not allow for magic to exist. This is important stuff. Right. So, regardless, he decides that, hey, let me head on back to Ionia. And the plot about it is literally that he has to find himself in Ionia, which is like the entire idea of Xin Zhao is leaving Ionia behind, leaving the hurt, leaving the sorrow behind, because it's not who he is. He is who he is. And yes, it would be nice to go back, but that's not gonna happen. It's a fantasy. It's a lost cause. Acceptance of his circumstances is essentially who Xin Zhao is. He found himself through his story and his adventure, and he became Demacian. He found him, like, that is, he doesn't want to go back. It's not necessary for him. Sure, he would potentially want to visit, but his role as Seneschal of Demacia does not allow for it. It doesn't. He has one of the most important roles in the entire kingdom. He isn't going to leave the country unless for extremely specific reasons, and basically reasons that will never ever be in service to anything other than Demacia. It just won't. That isn't who he is. He's not even going back to Rykon. He's never been where he's going. There's no reason for him to go there. Well, okay, the Spirit Blossom, but the Spirit Blossom is a bad idea. Also, he doesn't care about it. He shouldn't even know what a Spirit Blossom is. Send someone else. He's not the only Ionian you have. And I don't even mean Sona. Sona doesn't have to be the one to do this. I don't know. This isn't who the character is. Send someone else if you really want to figure that stuff out. Get help from the Mage Seekers. And before we all go, the Mage Seekers are just, villains, blah, 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 blah. that's only because the story is written that way. I'm not saying that they are good guys. They are not. But you can make them gray characters, right? You can have them do good things. You can have them do important stuff. You can have them do stuff that makes sense, that justifies their existence in the first place, so that they aren't just this secret police Gestapo, right? Because that just hurts the story when they don't have any purpose that is morally good. It makes everything just weird and unrealistic. And now we are at 55 minutes. Fuck. I'm so sorry, guys. But I have more. So what's gonna happen is that, like, he has no reason to talk to Kennen. He has no reason to get to know Yunara. There's no actual reason any of this is happening. There's no reason Kennen has the role in the story that he does. It's just doesn't make sense. All of this is only because Xin Zhao got his ASU and he was thrown into like a plot line where Riot knew that they wanted to tie Arcane into stuff. They knew that they were going to do something with Noxus. They knew they wanted to release Spirit Blossom stuff this year. And they knew they wanted to do something with Darkin because they wanted to create... This is specifically about creating Sahen because he's a very appealing to the lowest, he's appealing to the lowest common denominator, which just means that he's broadly appealing. And they wanted this type of character in. So they were like, okay, we're going to do Darkin stuff, we're going to do Spirit Blossom stuff, and we're going to do Noxus stuff. We need to tie everything together. Okay, how do we do that? Well, we've already seen some stuff about Noxus in Arcane, so we'll just go right off the bat. That is why we choose Noxus now. So let's have, I don't know, Mordekaiser, he's essentially Noxus, right? And we'll do that because we've shown LeBlanc, and just have LeBlanc be a part of the story to develop that character, and people that saw her in Arcane, so yeah, develop her a bit. That's fine, right? And then we need to get to Ionia for Spirit Blossom. Well, how are we gonna do that? Wait, there's something about the Darkin. We can do something about the Darkin. Let's just take a look at this. And then it's like, okay, we have Xin Zhao's ASU, which we want to do this year. How can we tie that to Spirit Blossom? Oh, wait a second, the Darkin is a spear. We want to kind of do that spear thing. Oh, rather it's a glaive, right? He has a spear. Wait a second, what if we turned Xin Zhao into a Darkin? People are open to the idea of champions dying now, so this decision should feel good regardless of how good the story is, right? It's, oh shit, epic story, Xin Zhao dies. So what about the entire, like, okay, how do we get him there? Just give him a Spirit Blossom, right? Yeah, LeBlanc can do that. That's kind of what she does. She can do that. She can get him there. Of course he would want to go. He loves Spirit Blossom. He's Ionian. Why don't we just do that, right? So we send Xin Zhao, we get him killed, and it's all for no purpose, and Atakan dies, and LeBlanc justifies it by saying, I can kill demons now. Oh shit, that was what I wanted to know. That's perfect. Let me just sacrifice control of a Darkin weapon and of a demon, because I had no other ways of figuring this stuff out. Also, why specifically the glaive instead of the scythe, which is also in Ionia, and was actually in our hands once, and it's actually wielded by a guy that's not inside of the spirit realm. Sahen also has no reason to exist, and he's a bad design, and he ignores all of what Darkin are supposed to be. I have a video on Darkin, but I believe it's a little bit outdated. I have new stuff on it too. I want to explore that at some point. For now, we'll ignore it. Xin Zhao. And then, actually, let's just conclude this by, yeah, let's finish it up. But like, let's also conclude that Xin Zhao arrives and he just thinks to himself, there's a bunch of other world building stuff that's bad, but he thinks to himself, you know what? You know what? I should be defeating this Darkin along with Yunara. Oh my god, this is Yunara's job. Actually, that is literally her job, and I don't know how she would ever fucking do that by herself. That is idiotic, but that is her job. Holy shit, wait, me Xin Zhao, Seneschal to Demacia, who doesn't actually care about Ionia that much anymore, which, it's nice to be here, it's nice to visit, it's nice to see, you know, the life that could have been and all that stuff, that's cool, but why am I helping these people do this stuff? Like, he does not care. He doesn't have to care. How does he have the ego to arrive at the conclusion that he can defeat a Darkin better than the entirety of Demacia? The entirety of fucking Demacia, bro. Do you know what that is? Do you know what it is? Fucking let them come, send fucking Galio into their faces. I swear to God, he's also managed in a poor way. I'm pretty sure he could destroy most stuff as long as it has magic, and he could probably also dull most stuff. Regardless, you don't need to care. You even know this. You yourself said that the Winged Protector defeated a Darkin once. The Winged Protector is a legend, and the Darkin, to your knowledge, is a legend if we ignore the fact that Legends of Runeterra just spread them everywhere for no reason. Let's not count the Legends of Runeterra Darkins, honestly. Like, sure, we can assume that they were characters, but let's not count their designs, and let's not think too much about their actual existence, because some of it doesn't really make much sense, and like, but whatever, why wouldn't Kale come back if that's what you believe in? What? What is the logic? What is the logic? You've defeated the harrowing. I actually didn't even think they did this. In the fall thing, which doesn't make any sense. They are kind of essentially the region that is best equipped to deal with harrowings, and harrowings they would have absolutely had like a bunch of knowledge about how to deal with those situations. What I'm trying to say is that they've dealt with worse stuff. They have demon problems. They have a demon hunter. Okay, they must have some knowledge of how to deal with it. They have essentially the biggest relationship to the Sentinels of Light, even though they hate magic, which does kind of mean a lot. And then it's also the Freljordian Raiders, which they have repelled, and they've repelled Noxus multiple times. And like, I get it. Sure, Darkin are different from just regular mortals. But let's not power creep everything that much. Not that much. We can power creep stuff. It's pretty cool that they are that strong. But it's not that bad. It's not that bad that you yourself think in your little fucking head that the person next to you who's designed to do this task, supposedly, even though she couldn't because she's just a regular human just like him, and she does not have the power to defeat a Darkin. But whatever, that's her job, right? Her job is to defeat Sahen should this ever happen. Alright, also we know that Sahen is supposed to be the good Darkin because that's a great fucking thought. So what? Why would she even be scared? Somehow, this is the other thing. Oh, there's so much stuff. Why would Sahen contact Xin Zhao? And he deliberately tells Xin Zhao, this is not what you seek. Turn home. You do not want the Darkin weapon. This is what will happen to Demacia if you are not there. He's been told to leave. The trials, like the visions he had, Bo Yang, the guy who he fought, right, who also died, also asks him a question. I don't remember exactly what it was, but like the answer to it was that is not who Xin Zhao is. Like, he has come to terms with who he is and what he's done. Would it have better to not fight at all? No, because like it doesn't matter. He's made his choice. He lives in the now. Right? This isn't Xin Zhao's story. This is not his job. This is not how you handle the Darkin. This is not how you handle LeBlanc. You fired all of the great writers who actually understood that this is a seriously complex universe to work with. And what you did with it is this. we have not just become Marvel, I believe we've become worse. Okay, probably not, honestly. But like, this is Marvel level quality. Specifically Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? We are just a comic book. And comic books are cool, but they aren't intended to invoke much deeper stuff. If in many cases there are deep comics. I won't hate too much in comics. That's not what, like, comics are a form of like content to consume stories. Obviously they can be really, really good. That's not what it's about. What I'm trying to say is just that we do have a lot of fast food content in comics, and that is what this is. What we're being given, and what we've been given since like 2018 actually. It's pretty much just been bad for the most part. We had Arcane Season 1, and that's pretty much it. And Arcane Season 1 is an alternate universe to actual proper League anyway, but that is what it is. Regardless, hopefully I got to bring up some interesting points and tell you about Xin Zhao. And hopefully I don't know, I hope that you enjoyed the video and that you enjoyed my rambling, even though it unfortunately did go to 1 hour and 6 minutes now. I am very happy to, I think this went well, even though it became very, very long. I'm very happy about this video, so I hope that you enjoyed it. I really do. If you disagree with anything, let me know. I'm very open to discussing stuff. I can be wrong. It's not that what I say is right. These are also always just my opinions, right? But these are the things that I believe in. So it was a pleasure to have you guys, and I'm thankful you've made it to the end. If there's anything you would like me to dive into or explore more of, let me know. And hopefully I will see you again. Bye.